back here on the GSMC Football Podcast. And
keep yourself in the loop of everything football on the Golden State Media Concepts Football Podcast. The latest news on and off the field, be it college football, Big Ten, SEC, Big 12, Pac-12, ACC to the NFL. We've got you covered. Listen to the Golden State Media Concepts Football Podcast.
And welcome everybody to another edition of the GSMC Football Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Sports Network. As always, I'm your host, Kenneth, and it's great to have you guys here on this Monday, January 6th. We have a lot to talk about on the show today. Before I get into that, just want to remind you guys, as always, to tip or donate and get your comments recognized, make sure to hit that super chat button in the chat. If you want to see me acknowledge any thought or comment you may have throughout the live broadcast, makes the show more lively, more entertaining. Between myself, the host, and you guys, the viewers, we appreciate your guys' viewership each and every day, so any contribution you can make to the show means the world to us as we put out content for you guys each and every day. And also, the other way to help out the show is by going to the link at the bottom of the show segment on the ticker, GSMCpodcast.net. That is GSMCpodcast.net. So let's get into what we're going to discuss for today. So we're going to start off the show. We're going to recap last night's game between the Minnesota Vikings and the Detroit Lions. The Lions winning 31-9 and clinching the number 1 seed. The Vikings now drop to the number 5 seed. So we'll get into that, talk about that game. We'll also talk about how the NFC South championship went down, even though the two teams that were playing for it didn't play each other. But we'll talk about the two games that involved the NFC South, and that is we'll talk about the Buccaneers and the Saints game and the Falcons and the Panthers game and how those games played out. We'll also talk about Aaron Rodgers and his performance yesterday and what could have been his final game as a starting quarterback in the NFL. He will make a decision at some point if he wants to continue playing, if he wants to retire. We'll get into all of that as well. That's been one of the main staples of this 2024 season, and it'll continue into the new year here as we wait on his decision on what he wants to do. We'll also talk about the NFL draft order. Who got the number 1 overall pick? The Tennessee Titans. So we'll talk about that. Who's in the top 3, all that good stuff. And then in the final part of the show, we'll take a look at the bracket for the 2024-2025 playoffs in the NFL. Who's matching up against who. And I will go over the full bracket, who I have advancing. My Super Bowl prediction is still intact, so we know that's going to be in the Super Bowl part. But how do the other matchups play out? We'll get into all that on Friday, but we'll take an early look at the bracket since it has been finalized. So let's get into the first topic now, which is talking about the Lions-Vikings game from last night. Now, I thought this was going to be a very high-scoring game between both teams, and the Vikings, had they converted on some fourth downs inside the 5, they went for it on 4th and goal a couple of times. If they would have converted, the game would have been closer. That was not the case. Also, there was another point where Anthony Van Ginkel could have had a pick 6, his 3rd pick 6 of the year. His first 2 were against the Giants, which I was in attendance for, and also the Jets, which was one of the international games this year. So he could have had his 3rd pick 6 of the season. That would have been huge had that would have happened. But that was not the case. The Vikings, they could not cash in the red zone. They failed to score a touchdown last night. And the Lions ended up winning this game 31-9. And Jahmyr Gibbs scored all their touchdowns. He had 4 touchdowns last night, and he's unbelievable. The 2 touchdown runs that he had, I thought he was going to get tackled, but he just was able to get through the hole and score. That's how fast he is. He is really fast. And he had a great game last night. And it's important for the Lions that they were able to get this win because dealing with the injuries that they're dealing with right now. They did get Alex Anzalone back on defense, which was huge. And the defense, it played well for the most part. Because like I said, if the Vikings would have converted on those 4th and goals, it would have been a different game, but they didn't. Give the Lions credit. They were able to stop them there. And they will be able to rest, get a week off. And their bye week was week 5, which I didn't realize that. They had a very early bye week. Or I just forgot about it. Because obviously week 5 happened so long ago. So they did deserve this, because now, when we go into the divisional round, it's possible you could get some of the guys that are injured back. Maybe you get David Montgomery back to go along with Gibbs, and Sonic and Knuckles reunite in the divisional round. And maybe you get some guys back on defense. Now, more guys got hurt last night for the Lions on defense. So we'll see what happens there. But at least for the moment, the Lions can exhale a bit. You got the bye. And I think, this whole time, even when the Vikings were undefeated, still felt Lions are the best team in the NFC. And they proved that last night. Now, Sam Darnold was not great last night. He went 18 of 41 for 166 yards, no touchdowns, no interceptions. Not what you wanted to see in a big game like this. And Sam Darnold has had a great year. 35 touchdowns and 12 picks. But this was a huge game for the Vikings, and he did not deliver. This was actually the stadium where he made his first career start. So you thought, I did think for a moment, maybe he could win this game. And just like he did his first career start, and give the Vikings a first-round bye. But it just didn't happen that way. Missed Justin Jefferson a couple times. Like I said, those 4th and goals that they went for, and also Jefferson was wide open. That could have been, at one point, there was a touchdown. I mean, Jefferson is always open for the most part because, he is the best receiver in the NFL. But, just some missed opportunities by the Vikings that could have maybe changed this game a little bit. And, Jared Goff had a couple picks last night. One of them led to a field goal because he was trying to set up a screen pass to Craig Reynolds. That ended up getting intercepted, but the Vikings only turned that into a field goal. They didn't advance the ball at all after that interception. So they settled for a Reichert field goal, so that made it 7-3. I mean, this game was still in reach at the half. It was 10-6. So it's not like, they were getting blown out in the first half and that was it. No, this game was close. But the Vikings just could not generate points. They opened up the third quarter. They get to the Lions 2. They go for it. And they don't get it. Jared Goff throws an interception. It was basically an arm punt. And that led to another Reichert field goal. So that made it 10-9. But then the Lions responded. They went down the field. And on 4th and 2, they go for it. Goff connects with Jahmyr Gibbs for the 10-yard touchdown. They went for it on 4th and 2, so that was a big play there. So that made it 17-9. Then Reichert misses a field goal on 4th and 4 from the Lions' 34-yard line. That was a 51-yard field goal, so he missed that. That was wide right. And then the Lions scored another touchdown. Jahmyr Gibbs, a 13-yard touchdown. Then he scored in the 4th quarter again, a 4-yard touchdown. And that's how we got to 31-9. For Jared Goff, a couple picks last night, 27-33, 231 yards. 1 touchdown, 2 interceptions. Jahmyr Gibbs, 23 carries, 139 yards, 3 touchdowns. And he also had 5 receptions for 31 yards and a touchdown. Amon-Ra St. Brown, 6 for 77. Sam Laporta, 7 for 63. Jameson Williams, 6 for 34. They also got Khalif Raymond back, another player that was hurt. That's good for them. And the Lions defense, a couple sacks on Darnold. Jake Bates went 1 for 1 on field goals, 4 for 4 on extra points. And they improved to 15-2 on the season. Vikings dropped to 14-3. So the Lions, they get the week off. Vikings, like I said, they will be playing Monday night against the Rams. And I don't want to get on Darnold. I don't want to get all over on Darnold after this game because, again, he's been so great this year. But I kept saying that my assessment of him is incomplete. I want to see how he plays in a game like this, and how is he going to do in the playoffs? And so far, now the Vikings have another opportunity. Look, you got the playoffs coming up, a team that you did lose to, so you're seeing them again the second time around, so maybe that bodes well for them. But, against the Lions, you went 0-2 against them, and he didn't play well. Now, people were saying he was amped up for this game, and absolutely, you got to be amped up for the game. But, he was missing guys. It wasn't a good performance last night. So hopefully, you learn from it. You still got another chance. Go out there next week, play a good Rams team who rested their guys yesterday, and, put together a better performance. But even if the Vikings lose on Monday, Darnold plays really well. What are you going to do? I think Darnold deserves to get that new contract because of how he's played. And there's unknowns with J.J. McCarthy, obviously. So we could see Darnold be the starter next year and they keep J.J. McCarthy, or they move off of him, because there are teams that are looking for quarterbacks, and maybe, the Vikings do move off J.J. McCarthy and Darnold has nobody waiting behind him, and he's the guy moving forward. I think next year, right now, I would lean towards you give Darnold another go, and he's your starter. Because, there's that unknown with J.J. McCarthy. But they could move off of J.J. McCarthy. Who knows? But, not what you wanted to see out of Darnold last night. I was expecting him to play better. And, again, the Vikings had chances. Cam Akers had a big run. And it looked like maybe he was going to score, but then he got tackled short of the goal line. Or, I think in between the 5 and the 10. Around there. And, again, Van Ginkel drops a potential pick 6. They had their chances, but it's just they couldn't cash in. And they were a 14-3 team that is going to be playing on Wild Card Weekend. Oh, I'm sorry, Super Wild Card Weekend. So, look, you still got another opportunity. You lost out on the division and the number 1 seed, but hey, you're still in the playoffs. You're still in the dance. Anything can happen. And let's see what they do on Monday against the Rams. But let me know what you guys think about this game. What were your takeaways from it? Let me know in the comments. So we're going to take our first break of the show now. When we come back, we will talk about how the NFC South shaped out. We'll talk about both games. The Buccaneers defeating the New Orleans Saints to clinch the division. The Falcons actually ended up losing to the Panthers in overtime. So we'll get into all that when we return. So with that being said, stick around, and we'll be right back here on the GSMC Football Podcast.
I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind? Please, Lord, give me a sign, a sign. I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind? Please, Lord, give me a sign, a sign.
I wanna be the greatest. Everybody on the fake shit. I look around and feel like everybody is the fakest. I make this every day and I'm impatient, hoping one day I blow up from the basement. Statement, the top is so vacant. I don't hear shit that I think is amazing. Waiting for my day when I'm playing sold out shows for 1,000 faces. Hey, give me that crown, get in my way and to be put down. It ain't your place, all this my town. If I want that shit, then I'll get it right now. I'm losing it, the noose it fits. I'm losing shit, a stupid myth. You choose to live or choose to dip. You choose to fight or lose your grip and lose a gift. Oh,
I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind? Please, Lord, give me a sign, a sign. I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind?
All right, and we are back here on the GSMC Football Podcast. And for the second part of the show, we're going to talk about how the NFC South shaped out. We'll talk about both games. Buccaneers defeating the Saints 27-19. Falcons losing to the Panthers 44-38, which I did not expect that game to be as high scoring as it was. And I did think the Falcons were going to win, but they ended up losing that game. And look, for the Panthers, they ended the season strong, winning that game. Bryce Young looked really good yesterday. I think he threw 3 touchdowns in that game. He looked good. But also Michael Penix looked good too. Made some good throws to Drake London. So I think so far so good with Michael Penix. The Falcons really need to improve their defense though. It got absolutely shredded yesterday. And, the Panthers, they were missing Chuba Hubbard. So I did take the Falcons to win and cover the spread. 8.5 was a big number. But, the Panthers, they were missing Chuba Hubbard. And Miles Sanders has been a disappointment for them. He actually made some plays for them yesterday. You also had Blackshear running the football as well. The Panthers, they ended up running the ball for 155 yards. Miles Sanders had 66 yards on the ground. Blackshear had 47 yards on the ground. Bryce Young had 2 rushing touchdowns. Oh, he had 3. Yeah, he had 3 passing touchdowns. So he had 5 total touchdowns yesterday. He had a good game. 25 of 34, 251 yards. No turnovers in the game. He was good. And then for the Falcons, Michael Penix, he went 21 of 38 for 312 yards, 2 touchdowns and a pick. Bijan Robinson, he finishes the year with over 1,400 yards rushing and 14 touchdowns. He's going to be a great player for them. I mean, these first 2 years he's been solid. But Penix, he finishes his 3 games, 775 yards passing, 3 touchdowns, 3 interceptions. Drake London had a big game, 10 receptions for 187 yards and 2 touchdowns. Falcons defense, no sacks on the day. They need to improve that defense. Total yards for this game for both teams, the Panthers had 425 yards of total offense. Falcons outgained them. They had 537 total yards of offense. But this game was just back and forth the whole time. The Falcons were leading 24-17 at the half. Michael Penix threw a pick on their first drive. That led to a Panthers touchdown. Then the Falcons missed a field goal. Panthers scored to make it 31-24. Then it was 31-31. Then it was 38-31 Panthers in the fourth quarter. Bryce Young had a 10-yard rushing touchdown. And then the Falcons did tie it. Bijan Robinson from 4 yards out scored. They went into overtime. The Panthers got the ball, and they went 10 plays, 70 yards, and Miles Sanders scored the game-winning touchdown from 1 yard out. So they finished the year 5-12. And I thought they were going to win 2 games again, I think. I think that's what I had them at. But you know what? Since Bryce Young took back the job from Andy Dalton, he looked like a different quarterback. And if you're a Panthers fan, you got to be very encouraged moving forward. If they can continue to build up this roster, and if Bryce Young could play like how he did after he got reinserted into the starting job, who knows? But you got to be encouraged by what you saw. He finished with 2,400 yards passing, 15 touchdowns, 9 picks. So let's see what happens. But the Falcons, they ended up losing this game, and it didn't really matter what the outcome was going to be because the Buccaneers ended up winning. And that game was not pretty to start off. The Saints were kind of having their way with the Bucs defense early on. They were dominating time of possession early. Both teams exchanged field goals on their first drives. Then the Saints went up 6-3. They kicked another field goal. The Bucs then had a quick drive in the second quarter. Saints scored a touchdown. That made it 13-3. Spencer Rattler connected with Dante Pettis for a 5-yard touchdown. So yeah, that made it 13-3. Then it was 13-6. Bucs kicked a field goal. Then it was 16-6 at the half. Groupie kicked a field goal before the end of the half, a 39-yard field goal. So it wasn't looking good for Tampa early on. I was getting a little nervous. But then they opened up the second half with a touchdown drive. Baker Mayfield connected with Durham, the other tight end, for a 6-yard touchdown. So they were down 3. And then the Saints punted. Baker Mayfield threw a pick on the Bucs' next possession. That got tipped, which led to it being picked. And the Saints turned that into a field goal, 49-yard field goal from Groupie. Back-to-back punts by both teams. And then Baker led a 12-play, 82-yard drive down the field. They went for it on 4th and 8 from the Saints' 42. And Baker connected with Jalen McMillan for 33 yards. But then there was an unsportsmanlike conduct penalty that pushed them back a little bit. But later in the drive, Baker, a nice throw to Jalen McMillan. Nice pitch and catch for a 32-yard touchdown on 1st and 18 from the Saints' 32. And that put the Bucs up by 1. And then the Saints punted. Bucs got the ball back. They scored another touchdown. Baker on 3rd and 14. This was a big play. Scrambled for 28 yards. And they got down to the 11. And he threw a backwards pass to Bucky Irving, so that counted as a run. And that was an 11-yard rushing touchdown. And that put them up by 8. Saints then turned it over on downs. Bucs got the ball back. Now, what was interesting is that they didn't just go into victory formation and take a knee. They wanted Mike Evans to get his incentives. And he got it. They completed a pass for 9 yards to Mike Evans. He reaches 1,000 yards once again. And that's how that game ends. And the Buccaneers clinched the NFC South. And they will be playing the Commanders on Sunday night. They played the Commanders first week of the season, and the Bucs won. I think it was 37-17 or 37-20, something like that. Let me just look back really quickly. But yeah, they picked up the win. It didn't look good. It did not look good early on, but Baker Mayfield and the Bucs were able to overcome the early deficit. They get the win, and they're in the playoffs once again. So yeah, 37-20 was the final score the first time the Commanders and the Bucs met. So how is this game going to go? Well, we'll talk about it throughout the week. But, yeah, so, you know, for a while there, it didn't look good for the Bucs because of all the injuries that they were dealing with. And, you know, they just kept losing these close games. And it looked like the Falcons kind of hit their stride. But then all of a sudden, Kirk Cousins just started to not play well. I mean, really started not to play well. And that kind of cracked the door open for the Bucs. They walked through it. They got Mike Evans back. Jalen McMillan has stepped up. Bucky Irving had a good year. And here they are once again. Now, I do have my concerns going into the playoffs. I think their defense is a concern that I have. And, you know, they're seeing the Commanders again, another rematch. And this is, you know, that was Jane Daniels' first career start. You know, he's a different player now. Although, didn't look great in the game against the Cowboys yesterday before they pulled him. He was dealing with I think, what they say, leg soreness. And Marcus Mariota ended up picking up the win for the Commanders, and they are the 6th seed. So, yeah, we'll see how that game goes. It's going to be an interesting game, but I am concerned about the Bucs defense because, you know, they were kind of letting the Saints do what they wanted yesterday, and the Saints were missing Alvin Kamara, and there was no Derek Carr, no Chris Olave, no Rashid Shaheed, and, you know, early on, yeah, the Saints were having their way, but the Bucs stepped up when they had to. They got the stops that they needed, and Baker Mayfield and that offense, you know, got it going, and they picked up the win. This is one of the better offenses in the league. You know, Baker finished with his numbers, he has over 40 touchdown passes now. Or actually, no, I think he has, what is he at now? 41 touchdown passes, 16 picks, 4,500 yards passing. That is a really good year for Baker Mayfield. And what they had to overcome, you know, he was part of that. He was a huge reason for why they're in the playoffs. Bucky Irving, the rookie, 1,100 yards rushing, 8 touchdowns. Had a good year for them. Mike Evans, he finishes with 74 receptions for just over 1,000 yards, 1,004 yards on the season. And look, this is a dangerous team going into the playoffs. Like I said, worried about their defense, but that's a team that you don't want to play against. Now, they're playing against the Commanders, and the Commanders are a good team, and they have a good offense as well. So, right early on here, I expect there to be a lot of points scored between those two teams. I think that's one of the underrated games of the weekend is that Commanders-Buccaneers matchup. But yeah, no, for the Falcons, look, there's some things they're going to have to improve on. They fell short. Defensively, that's something that they need to improve. They need to improve that unit. Particularly I would say front seven. Although, pretty much all facets of that defense got torched yesterday by Bryce Young. So I think they need to go defensive heavy in the draft. Maybe you add another weapon. If the price is right. If you see a playmaker that you could bring in, whether it's free agency or the draft, I think they could address that. But I think defensively they need to make some improvements there. Michael Penix is going to be the starter moving forward. I liked what I saw so far, even if it was a small sample size. But, right now, he looks like he's going to be the latest quarterback from this draft class that's going to pan out. So, he's the guy, and, continue to surround him with talent. But I think the bigger issue for the Falcons, like I said, is defense. So, yeah, they fall short. I had them winning the division before the year started. I thought Kirk Cousins was going to be the starter throughout the whole year. That did not happen. The Buccaneers are in once again. They have now won another NFC South championship. Second year with Baker Mayfield. And this is it's their fourth straight. Because Brady won the last two in Tampa, and then Baker has won the last two as well. Baker has carried the torch from Tom Brady. Just in that sense. So, yeah, let me know what you guys think about this game, or these two games. What were your takeaways from them? Let me know in the comments. Before we go to break, just want to remind you guys, once again, to tip or donate and get your comments recognized. Make sure to hit that super chat button in the chat if you want to see me acknowledge any thought or comment you may have throughout the live broadcast. It makes the show more lively, more entertaining between myself, the host, and you guys, the viewers. We appreciate you guys' viewership each and every day, so any contribution you can make to the show means the world to us as we put out content for you guys each and every day. And also, the other way to help out the show is by going to the link at the bottom of the show segment on the ticker, GSMCpodcast.net. That is GSMCpodcast.net. So when we come back from our next break, we will talk about Aaron Rodgers and his performance in what could have been his final game ever as a starting quarterback in the NFL. And we'll talk about, is it possibly the end? I know we've had that conversation so many times, but we're going to continue to have that. And we'll probably talk about it some more because obviously when he makes a final decision, we will cover it. And we'll also talk about him throwing his 500 touchdown pass as well. So with that being said, stick around and we'll be right back here on the GSMC Football Podcast.
Looking for your daily fix of sports talk without having to pay for it? GSMC Sports Network is available on YouTube. Just search GSMC Sports Network. Get your fix of daily sports talk shows on YouTube, absolutely free. NFL, college football, NBA, MLB, MMA, UFC, fantasy football, and so much more. GSMC Sports Network has shows running all day long, with new sports shows starting every 2 hours. Just like on your favorite cable sports channel, except GSMC Sports Network is absolutely free. Just search GSMC Sports Network on YouTube to catch one of your new favorite shows, like the GSMC College Football Podcast, Chip Shot Football Podcast, Hoops and Heels Women's Sports Podcast, GSMC Basketball Podcast, and so many more. Check it out for yourself. GSMC Sports Network, now available on YouTube absolutely free. Search GSMC Sports Network on YouTube right now.
All right, and we are back here on the GSMC Football Podcast. And for the third part of the show, we're going to now talk about Aaron Rodgers and his performance yesterday in what could have been his final game ever. He did throw his 500th touchdown pass. He wasn't able to do that last week against the Bills. That was a nightmare of a game. And actually, this game against the Dolphins got off to a nightmare of a start because the very first play was an interception. And the funny thing is, I was watching the game in my basement, and I was watching Red Zone. So I heard my mom react to something upstairs, and I thought, well, it has to be the Jet game, right? And sure enough, I see Rodgers throw a pick. And I was like, of course course, that happened. And I thought, is he really going to lose this game? But that was the worst of it. Rodgers ended up playing well. He had 4 touchdowns last night. His 500th touchdown pass was to Tyler Conklin. It was not to Devontae Adams. It was to Tyler Conklin. However, Devontae Adams did score a touchdown later in the game. He had a touchdown. Breece Hall had a touchdown. Allen Lazard had a touchdown as well. I was kind of hoping that Garrett Wilson would have the 500th touchdown because I know there's been some news about him wanting out with the Jets. We'll see what happens there. But if this was it for Rodgers, it was a good way to go out. Now, the Dolphins, they still had something to play for, although they were probably keeping an eye on that Kansas City-Denver game, and as that game rolled along, you were like, yeah, they're probably not making it. Because the Broncos ended up winning 38-0 yesterday over the Chiefs' backups. So they're in. Again, we'll talk about that later in the show, the bracket, how that's all shaping out. But, Rodgers goes out with the win. And it was not, this season was not pretty. I mean, he even said it in his post-game interview with Pam Oliver. It was not pretty, but, I mean, overall, when you look at Rodgers' season, he finished with just under 3,900 yards passing, 28 touchdowns, 11 picks. I know people have said he's been horrendous this year. And look, he hasn't been great. But, I mean, this is one of the best seasons that a Jet quarterback has ever had, which is actually really sad to say, but it's true. I mean, he didn't have this, horrendous year that people are portraying this to be. Now, again, wasn't great by any means, but I think he had a better year than people would say he had. There was just a lot of other issues with the Jets this year. And look, he missed a lot of throws, and, some of the turnovers were bad, and just, the games like against the Cardinals were not good, and the Bills, from last week. Yeah, there were some duds there. But Rodgers could still play. It's got to be in the right situation, though. Has to be in the right situation. And the Jets weren't the right situation for him. Now, he wanted to go to the Jets. I guess he didn't know what he was getting himself into. And the Jets were a team that was looking for a spark at the quarterback position, and I still think they did the right thing. He was the best, other than Lamar Jackson possibly being available during that offseason where they got him, he was the best option. And it's just, last year happened with the Achilles injury, and then this year it's just, they did start off 2-1, but then everything just fell apart after the Denver loss. Everything just unraveled, and he got hurt. That's the other thing, too. Most of the year, he was playing hurt. And once he got healthier, like after the bye week, he looked better. Now, against some of these teams like the Jaguars, a lot of guys are going to do good against that team. But, he was moving around more. So, look, I still think Rodgers can play. Now, it's going to come down to, does he want to play? And that remains to be seen. He did talk about how he's going to, talk to the people of the Jets front office, and see what they're thinking, if they want to bring him back. My guess is right now, he's probably gone. And, maybe he'll get a feel of what's out there, where he could end up, because, again, there's always teams that need quarterbacks. And if there's a situation that he maybe likes, maybe he, goes to another team and he plays at least one more year. But my thoughts right now is I'm leaning towards he's going to retire at this moment. Now, that doesn't mean that that's going to happen, because I thought, after his final game with the Packers, I thought he was going to retire, and he didn't. He ended up wanting to play with the Jets. So I don't know. But at least for right now, I would lean towards he's going to call it a career. Even though I do think he's still going to, I think he could still play. But the situation has to be perfect. Now, I just wanted to go over his stats from yesterday. I think it was 271 yards passing, 74 yards passing, 4 touchdowns and a pick. They did try this trick play yesterday where Rodgers threw it back to Davante Adams, and then Davante threw it back to Rodgers, and then Rodgers threw it back to Davante, and then Davante got destroyed on that play. And I thought, oh, this is just not good. But no, Rodgers got into a groove. There weren't like huge plays in this game. He didn't chuck the ball 60 yards down the field. But he was efficient. And again, 28 touchdowns to 11 picks. You look at that with no context. I mean, it's not a bad. I mean, even with context, it's not a bad year. It's not a bad year. There were just so many other issues with the Jets. It wasn't just him. This was a team issue. Now, if Rodgers played really bad this year and the Jets defense was how it was last year and the coaching was competent, then we'd be having a different conversation. But I just think there were just so many other issues with the Jets. You can't just pinpoint it and blame it on one individual. But he went 23 of 36 yesterday. The Jets ran the ball for 118 yards. Breece Hall, 57 yards on the ground. Isaiah Davis had 41 yards on the ground. Braylon Allen had 15 yards on the ground. Davante Adams, 6 receptions for 88 yards and a touchdown. Allen Lazard, 3 for 71 and a touchdown. Garrett Wilson, 4 for 51. The Jets defense had 4 sacks of Tyler Huntley yesterday. In this game, he went 25 of 41 for 227 yards, 1 touchdown, 2 interceptions. Devon Achane, had his way with that Jets defense. He almost had he had a touchdown in this game, but I think he could have had 2, unless that was on the same drive. It might have been. Actually, no. I think they might have got held to a field goal when he had that. Yeah, he got held to. They got held to a field goal on another Achane run. It was for. Yeah, it was a 61-yard run. The Jets were able to stop him and limit them to a field goal. So, yeah, he could have had 2 touchdowns. But, yeah, the Jets ended up putting up 30 points in this game. 32-20, they won. They finished 5-12. Very short of what I expected them to be. I had them at 11-6. But they lost a lot of one-score games this year. And if they would have been able to come back or if they were able to hold some of these leads, who knows what would have happened. But, yeah, if, Rodgers ends up leaving the Jets officially, yeah, that was not a success. Far from it. And the Jets, we'll see what happens, what they do with their head coach position and their GM position. We'll cover all that. Already, teams have been making moves. Gerard Mayo actually got let go, so we'll actually talk. We'll talk about that at some point. Not going to get to it today, but the Patriots let him go after 1 year, and coming off of a win, they let him go. And a lot of people are saying, and I agree with it, looks like Mike Vrabel might be getting that job. So, yeah, we'll get into all that. We'll also talk about the Giants. They will not be making changes to their head coach or GM. So that was made apparent from a statement by John Mara. But there's still teams that will be making changes, and we'll get into all that, of course, as we move into the off season. But back to Rodgers and the Jets. So Aaron Rodgers threw his 500th touchdown last night. That was something he really wanted. And it was to an unlikely player in Tyler Conklin because he wanted to throw it to Davante Adams. That's what most people would say. But it didn't happen. He threw it to Conklin. Davante got his touchdown. And, he joins an elite company. Tom Brady, Drew Brees, Peyton Manning, Brett Favre. All have 500 touchdowns. And he joins that. Tom Brady has the most by far, but that's because he's played for so long, and he was never really hurt. But yeah, I mean, it's an elite class. So yeah, Tom Brady has 649 touchdowns. Drew Brees has 571. Peyton Manning has 539. Brett Favre 508. Aaron Rodgers has 503. It's an elite class. You know, I grew up watching all those guys. Well, Brett Favre was towards the end of his career, but you know, I remember the NFC Championship game against the Saints because I wanted to see Brett Favre versus Peyton Manning in the Super Bowl. But we fell short of that. Breeze ended up winning against Peyton. But yeah, no. If Rodgers calls it a career, you know, I'm gonna miss him because he's just been a lot of fun to watch over the years. I know he's given people headaches, certain people headaches, in recent years, but you know, just from a pure football standpoint, just watching him every Sunday and make these incredible throws, I'm gonna miss it. You know, it's another quarterback from that era, the 2010s, which is arguably the greatest era of football, quarterback-wise, that we're ever gonna see. It's just another one that really the last great one that's gonna call it a career if this is it. I know we still have, we still have Stafford, we still have Flacco, but Flacco's eventually Flacco was on his couch before the Browns called him last year. So, I mean, this could be it for him. Who knows? Stafford's got some years left. Russ, I guess you could put him in that conversation as well. But, yeah, no, this is just another one of the great ones that could be calling it a career. And it's sad. It's sad, however you want to look at it. You know, because this is one of my favorite players growing up. And, you know, it's going to be sad if he does call it a career. I still think he can play. It's got to be in the right situation. But, you know, if you go out with a win and, you know, you throw 4 touchdowns, you get your 500 touchdown pass, you know, I mean, that's an okay way to go out. And the thing is, he doesn't really owe the Jets anything. You know, like, I mean, he came here and he said that, you know, the Lombardi trophy is getting lonely there and all that. And he wanted to win here, but, you know, if he calls it a career, it is what it is. You know, unfortunately, he hasn't gone through this long drought with the Jets like Jet fans have. So that's why I'm saying he doesn't really owe the Jets anything. You know, he if he wants to retire, he can. Well, the other thing too is, I mean, Jet fans want him gone. So you can also say that. But yeah, no, what a career it was. If this is it, you know, congrats to him on getting his 500 touchdown pass. Look, back to the Jet thing though, really quickly. I was really hoping it was going to work out. I wanted him to succeed here. I wanted him to succeed not just because, you know, I wanted him to prove the doubters wrong, but also because, look, I'm not a Jet fan, but I have a lot of friends and family that are Jet fans, and I wanted to see him do well for them. Because some of them didn't even want him, and I wanted him to prove them wrong. But also just, you know, give them a playoff run. And it didn't happen that way. Now, there were a lot of things that went wrong. It wasn't just him. But it is what it is. And it's most likely going to be the outcome of they're going to part ways, and then we'll see what happens. But I think at this moment he's going to retire. That's just my thought. All right, but let me know what you guys think, though, about Aaron Rodgers' performance from yesterday. Do you think this is it for him? Do you think he comes back to the Jets? Do you think he goes to another team? Let me know in the comments. So we're going to take our next break. When we come back, we will talk about the updated draft order. The Tennessee Titans will have the number 1 overall pick. So we'll talk about that, where some of the other teams will be picking. Whole draft order is, of course, not finalized because we have the playoffs. So, yeah, make sure to stick around, and we'll be right back here on the GSMC Football Podcast.
For the best and latest podcasts available anywhere, go to the podcast app on your cell phone and type in GSMC to access free content-rich podcasts on health and wellness, book reviews, sports, entertainment, relationships, social media, movies, technology, finance, and even weird news. Subscribe and download the GSMC Podcast Network's family of shows, available everywhere podcasts are found.
All right, and we are back here on the GSMC Football Podcast. And for the fourth part of the show, we're going to now get into talking about the updated draft order. The Tennessee Titans will be picking first. They're on the clock. Like I said, the draft order isn't finalized, the full draft order, because, we still got to see how the playoffs shape out. But the first 18 picks, so you got the Titans will be picking first, then the Cleveland Browns, then the New York Giants. The Patriots will be the fourth pick, and they won their game yesterday against the Bills with Joe Milton as the starter. He actually made some good plays yesterday. So, I don't know, maybe if a team wants to take a chance on him, because we know Drake May is going to be the guy moving forward. Maybe there's a team out there that trades for him. I don't know. I'm just throwing that out there. Then you have the Jaguars at 5, the Raiders 6, the Jets are 7, Panthers 8, Saints are 9th, Bears are 10th, and the 49ers are 11th. 6-11 they finished with their loss yesterday to the Cardinals. It was not pretty. There was no Brock Purdy, no Deebo Samuel, but yeah, it's just, what'd they end up losing? It was like 47-24, I think the final score. Yeah, 47-24. Not a good year for the Niners. Cowboys will be picking 12th, Dolphins 13th, Colts 14th, Falcons 15th, Cardinals 16th, Bengals 17th, and the Seahawks will be picking 18th. But I want to focus on, at least the top 5. So, my friend said in our sports chat that supposedly the Titans love Cam Ward. Again, this is very early on, so who knows. But most likely, when you look at the Titans and the Browns, those two teams will be taking quarterbacks. It's obvious Will Levis is not the answer for the Titans. They gave him a year, and it just didn't pan out. They tried to surround him with more talent, and he doesn't seem like he's the guy. So, and you got a new head coach in there with Callahan. He's going to want to maybe take his guy and start over. So it could either be Shedeur Sanders or Cam Ward. And then with the Browns, yeah, the Deshaun Watson thing has not worked out. They restructured his contract. They want to bring in competition. And whether that is Shedeur Sanders or Cam Ward, it's going to be a rookie quarterback that they're going to bring in. Because Deshaun Watson, even before he got hurt, he was not playing well. And I know I said before the year started, I thought Watson would be inconsistent. I thought the Browns were still going to win games because I thought, they'd still be a good enough team to do that. Because look at what they did last year. But this was like the complete opposite. I had them winning 10 games. They won 3 games. Last year they won 11 games with 5 different starting quarterbacks. This year they won 3 games. So, didn't pan out. So, yeah, they want to hit the reset button. But they're kind of stuck with Deshaun Watson. So you're going to have him on the team. But you're probably going to take a quarterback as well. And then you got the Giants, who are an interesting spot. The number 3 pick. And I think Giant fans, including myself, we're okay with them being at 3 because you could take arguably the best player in the draft, and that is Travis Hunter from Colorado. Now, I don't know what's going to happen if you take him because, he plays 2 positions. Would you rather him, honestly, because of how the Giants' offense has been over the years, just play receiver. Pair him with Malik Neighbors and just play receiver. Because then you got yourself, a nice young receiving core between Neighbors and Travis Hunter. Now, I know some people are probably saying, well, who's going to throw them the ball? That's a very good question. I don't know. I don't know then. Then what do the Giants do? Do you take a quarterback in the later rounds? Are you going to bring in a bridge guy and then, you hope you can maybe get somebody in the draft next year? I don't know. But I don't think you could pass up on Travis Hunter. So you can get him in Neighbors, that'd be perfect. But, when you could drop it down to 4. Now, on Tankathon, they have McMillan from Arizona, the wide receiver, going to them. Now, the Patriots need another playmaker on offense. So I guess maybe if the Giants were at 4, maybe you take him or you trade down. I guess, yeah, if you would have had 4, maybe you trade down and just get more picks. Or unless you trade up and you give away assets and try to take one of the quarterbacks. But, yeah, the Patriots need another receiver, so that does make sense if they end up going that route. And then the next few picks, you got Mason Graham from Michigan going to Jacksonville. Will Johnson going to the Raiders, corner from Michigan. Abdul Carter from Penn State going to the Jets. Yeah, I mean, the Jets need another pass rusher because their pass rush really was a disappointment this year. And, going out and getting Hassan Reddick did not pan out. So, yeah, they're going to need a pass rusher. They got the Panthers getting Mikel Williams from Georgia, another edge rusher. And then you got some offensive linemen in there. They have the 49ers getting James Pierce Jr. from Tennessee. And then Ashton Genty going to the Cowboys, which, I mean, I feel like that does make the most sense because the Cowboys need a running back. And it, makes sense. But could they go another route? Maybe, I don't know. They took a lineman or if they added someone on defense. I don't know. Cowboys defense did play better towards the end of the year, a little bit better. But yeah, running back is a need for this team. And if they can get one of the best players in the draft, they take Genty. I mean, I think that's a good fit for him. I mean, look at what they did with Zeke in 2016. They took him and, he was unbelievable for a little bit there. If the Cowboys have a good offensive line, whatever they decide to do at that position, they're going to have a good running game. They didn't have it this year. I mean, Dowdle had some good games down the stretch here, but he's not the long-term answer. I think if you add someone to go along with him, then you have a nice combo there, but he's not the long-term answer at running back or as the number one back. And if they can get Genty, they're going to do it. So, yeah, no, it's something we're going to talk about for months here. I mean, look, we still got the playoffs to get through. But the first 3 picks, I kind of see that's how it's going to go. Both rookie quarterbacks get taken off the board, and then I guess Travis Hunter after that, which, again, I'd be okay with. Now, let's see. Tankathon does not have I don't think any other quarterbacks getting taken in the first round. Well, actually, for at least... Oh, yeah. Well, they have the other teams that are in the playoffs listed here. Yeah, no, there's no other quarterbacks listed. It's just Cam Ward and Shedeur Sanders. So we'll see. And maybe one of those teams ends up surprising us, or they trade out and someone, trades up to get Travis Hunter. I don't know. But like I said, I'm okay if the Giants end up getting Travis Hunter. I'll take that. But we just got to wait and see. We got a long way to go before we get to May. Or actually, no. Draft's in April. Right? May, I'm thinking of the schedule for the 2025 season coming out. The draft, yeah, because it's usually at the end of April. The draft is Looking right now quickly. Yeah, oh, yeah. So it's Thursday, April 24th to Saturday, April 26th. So, yeah, I mean, it's coming up. It'll be here before we know it. It'll be here before we know it. But not yet. Not yet. We got to get through the playoffs, the Super Bowl, and then, the offseason. That whole thing. I felt like that offseason last year just took forever. But, it is what it is. The season always flies by. I say it all the time. I mean, now that we're in the playoffs, I mean, it's unbelievable. That's just how it is. So, yeah, before we know it, we'll get to the draft, and we'll see, how the playoffs shapes out, and then the final draft order will be out. The draft order will be finalized. Better way to say it. But we know what the first 3 picks are going to be. Don't know what specific order, but we know it's going to be Shedeur Sanders, Cam Ward, Travis Hunter. It's going to be those 3 players taken off the board. And yeah, and we'll talk about it a little bit more, but I almost combined Brian Dable and Joe Schoen. Brian Dable and Joe Schoen will be back, so they'll be making the pick. And if they got to take the best player available, so be it. It's just now, how are they going to address the quarterback position? What is their plan? Because it's not a guarantee you're going to get a quarterback in the draft. So you got to go out and maybe get somebody. Do they bring in Kirk Cousins? Bring in Jameis Winston? Does Aaron Rodgers just walk across the hall and play for the Giants next year? I don't know. We'll have to wait and see. But if the Browns or the Titans shocks us and takes... I mean, that would really be shocking, but if they take Travis Hunter, then, okay, you get either Cam Ward or Shedeur Sanders. But as of right now, we don't know. It's very early on. And there's going to be so many reports coming out on, this team likes this team, and could this team trade out of this pick? There's going to be a lot of that. So the only way we're going to find out is if we get to, free agency, if there's a trade that's made, and then we get to the draft. All of these questions will be answered. It's just, right now, we're very early into the process. But the Titans have the number 1 pick. I don't see them not taking a quarterback because Will Levis is obviously not the guy. But, maybe they could say, we'll take Travis Hunter. Or maybe they go out and they sign a veteran. I don't know. Same thing with the Browns. They could do the same thing. Maybe they take Ashton Genty with the 2nd overall pick to replace Nick Chubb. Who knows? No, they're not going to do that. We'll find out. But let me know what you guys think. What do you think these teams are going to plan on doing? How do you see, these picks going? Do you think any of these teams, the top 3 teams, could potentially trade out? I don't think so. I mean, unless they get a deal that they can't refuse, which is easier said than done. But yeah, the top 3 is going to stay the same. And if the Giants don't get Cam Ward or Shedeur Sanders, they should take Travis Hunter. I'm all for that. So we are going to take our final break of the show now. And then when we come back, we will talk about the playoff bracket. How it looks, who's matching up against who. Not going to make any picks or anything, but we're just going to talk about each individual matchup starting on Saturday. And, what streaming services or what channels they will be on. We'll talk about all that when we get back from our final break of the show. So with that being said, for one final time today, stick around and we'll be right back here on the GSMC Football Podcast. All right, and we are back here on the GSMC Football Podcast. And for the final part of the show, we are going to take a look now at the playoff bracket for the 2024-2025 playoffs. And yeah, so everything is finalized now. First game will be on Saturday, and it will be the LA Chargers against the Houston Texans. And, these teams didn't play each other in the regular season. And what's kind of funny, if I can find the tweet. So, for a while now, the Texans, they just seem to always play on Saturday at 3:30. They're always the game that seems to start off the playoffs. It's been like that for a while. And it's going to be like that once again. And, of course, you have, with the Chargers, they made the playoffs a couple years ago. They had that epic collapse against the Jaguars. Things have changed since then. Brandon Staley is not the head coach anymore. It is now Jim Harbaugh. Justin Herbert is still the quarterback. And the Chargers, they exceeded expectations this year. I had them at 9 wins. They ended up winning 11 games and making the playoffs. And Jim Harbaugh has already turned this team around. And they will be taking on a Texans team that clinched the AFC South. They'll be hosting this game. But they've been kind of a disappointment this year. C.J. Stroud is in a sophomore slump. He has not played like he did last year. Texans are also dealing with some injuries. Stephon Diggs they brought in to be a difference maker, and he was playing well for them before he got hurt. And then you also had Tank Dell once again suffer a season-ending injury. And it's a pretty significant injury because now he's going to be out probably all of next year. And, who knows if he comes back. So it's just, they've been kind of a disappointment. But again, some of it has just not been their fault. Injuries, it happens to everybody. But Stroud has to play better. And, he's going to be going up against a good defense in the Chargers. Chargers have a good defense. And I still think, like I've been saying it, the Chargers I still think are a year away. But I do think that this is a game that they could definitely win. I'm not going to make any picks, but I'm just saying this is a game they could definitely win. I like the matchup for the Chargers here. I think this could be... I think it's going to be competitive. Stroud's going to have to step up, though. He's going to have to step up. And then the night game, and there's snow in the forecast, it's going to be on Amazon Prime. So the Chargers-Texans game will be on CBS. This game will be on Amazon Prime, and that is the Ravens and the Steelers. So they'll be matching up for the third time this season. Right now, the Ravens open up as 9.5-point favorites. The Steelers have now dropped 4 games in a row. They lost to the Bengals on Saturday. In the previous 3 games, they lost to the Chiefs, the Ravens, and the Eagles. They are not going into the playoffs with momentum. And it's like the reverse of last year where they won their final 3 games. And I know they got bounced down in the first round by the Bills, but they at least had like some momentum going into the playoffs. Now they have no momentum going into the playoffs. They've lost 4 in a row, and now they're playing a team that smacked them around a couple weeks ago. And, the Mike Tomlin critics have come out in full force because the Steelers were 10-3 at one point, and they have dropped 4 straight. They had a chance to win the division, host the playoff game. Now they're back to how it's been for years now. They get into the playoffs as a wild card team, and they could get knocked down in the first round. Now, this is the third meeting between these two teams. The Steelers, they got the best of them the first time, kicking 6 field goals. And then it was a competitive game for a little bit between them in Baltimore, but then the Ravens pulled away. They ended up winning 34-17. You had a pick 6 in that game. Russell Wilson threw. I mean, anything can happen. It's AFC North football. Who knows? Maybe third time around, this game is closer. Maybe it comes down to a field goal. I don't know. But the Ravens are rolling offensively. And, this is a playoff game. Lamar Jackson's going to have to, step up here in the playoffs. Because, the playoffs have not been kind to him. Now, he does have Derrick Henry this time around, and, Derrick Henry, the first time Lamar won MVP, tormented him in the playoffs. Now Lamar doesn't have to worry about that. He's got Derrick Henry on his side. So, we'll see how this game goes. We move on to the games for Sunday. So, to get us started, this is a Jim Nantz, Tony Romo vehicle, I'm sure, and that is the Buffalo Bills and the Denver Broncos. So the Broncos are in. They won 38-0 yesterday against the Chiefs backups. Bo Nix played really well. I think he had 4 touchdown passes in the game? Yeah, 4 touchdown passes. He won 26 of 29, 321 yards, had 47 yards rushing. He finishes his rookie campaign 29 touchdowns to 12 picks. It's not bad. The Broncos exceeded expectations. I had them winning 5 games. I didn't even have them sniffing the playoffs. But give him credit. Give Sean Payton a lot of credit. The defense has played well this year. And Bo Nix had a solid rookie year. And they'll be going up against the favorite when it comes to the MVP in Josh Allen. It's an interesting game. The Broncos, are they going to be able to keep up with Josh Allen and that Bills offense? Is the Broncos defense going to be able to, maybe limit Josh Allen to keep this game close? I think a key for the Broncos is trying to run the football. Use that ground game to your advantage. If you do that, keep Josh Allen off the field. They have a puncher's chance in this game. I definitely think they do. I think it could be a good game. It's got the potential for it. How is Bo Nix going to do in his first career playoff game? On Sunday you got 2 rookie quarterbacks playing. So we'll see how it goes there. The middle game, you got the Packers and the Eagles. Now, still got to keep an eye on Jalen Hurts. My guess is he is going to play. These two teams met way back in Week 1. So actually, on Sunday, we got 2 rematches from Week 1. The Brazil game was the Packers and the Eagles, so now they'll be playing in Philly. Packers, yesterday they ended up losing to the Bears on a last-second field goal by Cairo Santos. Jordan Love got hurt in that game, elbow injury, although it doesn't seem too serious because Matt LaFleur was debating on putting him back in because Malik Willis took over, and they were thinking about putting him back in because Packers, didn't want to play Philly. The Commanders ended up winning anyway, so it really didn't matter. But if the Commanders ended up losing to Dallas, maybe Matt LaFleur would have considered putting him back in. But yeah, it was a sloppy game for the Packers. They beat themselves against the Bears yesterday. There was a kickoff return. They turned the ball over as well. They beat themselves in that game, and then they just couldn't stop the Bears on that final drive. But they'll be taking on the Eagles again. They'll be taking on Saquon Barkley in that ground game, along with the stars that they have at receiver. And the Packers, on defense, you're missing some guys. Jair Alexander's out for the year. They miss him. And Christian Watson, suffered a knee injury yesterday, and it's not looking good for him. And they were without Romeo Doubs. And supposedly, if Romeo Doubs would have played yesterday, Christian Watson wouldn't have played because he was still a little banged up. So, just not a good game for the Packers yesterday. And they get off to these slow starts. You can't afford to do that against the Eagles. Now, the Eagles have a habit of, at times, playing down to their competition. Now, the Packers are a really good team. So, if the Eagles are struggling on offense, the Packers are a good team, but the Packers can't afford to get off to a slow start in this game. They got to come out fast. And I know they like to establish the run with Josh Jacobs, but got to get that passing game going. And I know I said that about the Eagles not too long ago, but Packers got to get their passing game going. They got to start fast. Now, they're the 7 seed once again. They're playing the 2 seed in the Eagles. Now, last year, the Packers, they were the 7 seed, and they took on the 2 seed in the Cowboys, and they beat them. So now they're taking on another NFC East opponent. Now, it's definitely going to be tougher in this game than it was last year, but maybe the Packers pull it off again. Who knows? Like I said, I'll be making my picks on Friday. Then we got the Commanders and the Bucs. We talked about that game a little bit earlier in the show. These two teams met in week 1. Right now, the forecast is 59 degrees. Doesn't seem like there's any rain at the moment. This game could be high scoring. Jane Daniels put together a solid rookie campaign as well. 25 touchdowns to 9 picks. He also, on the season, I don't have the rushing touchdown stats in front of me. Oh, yeah, he had 6 rushing touchdowns on the season. Baker Mayfield, 41 touchdowns to 16 picks. I think Jane Daniels will have a better game than he did back in week 1. Because in week 1, if we go back, so they lost that game 37-20. Jane Daniels, 184 yards passing. He had 2 rushing touchdowns. He had 88 yards on the ground. Baker Mayfield had 289 yards passing and 4 touchdowns. No interceptions. You know, it's definitely going to be a different game. I think Jane Daniels, you're going to have to throw for more yards in this game to keep up with that Bucs offense. Like I said earlier in the show, I have my concerns about the Bucs defense going into the playoffs. So we'll see. We'll see what happens there. But that ends off Sunday. That'll be the NBC game. And then finally, this game's on ABC, the Monday night game, Vikings and the Rams. So the Rams did win on that Thursday night. That was back in, I think it was, what was it, week 13? That was back in, even further than that, week 8. Really, that was week 8? Wow. I feel like it was, more recent, but I guess not. Rams ended up winning that game. They got Puka Nacua and Cooper Kupp back for that game. They looked like a different offense. Although their offense, their starters didn't play yesterday, but their offense has kind of struggled in recent weeks. But I expect them to have a better showing in this game on Monday. And I would hope that the Vikings have a better showing on Monday because last night was not good. But yeah, this game definitely is going to go differently. I don't know about the outcome, but I think we will see the Vikings step up. And I expect Darnold to have a better game than he did on Sunday or yesterday. But we'll have to wait and see. But, you know, the playoffs are going to be good. There's some good matchups here early on. Like I said, I don't want to give away too much because, you know, I want to save it for Friday when I make my picks. But that's what we got for the playoff bracket. Let me know what you guys think. What is your favorite matchup going into the weekend? Let me know in the comments. And with that, that is all the time that we have for today. Thank you guys for tuning in. Make sure to check out all the other shows as well. Make sure to leave a like, comment, and subscribe to the video. And until next time, I'm Kenneth Grunfelder signing off from the GSMC Football Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Sports Network. Have a good day, and I will talk to you guys tomorrow. Take care.
Let's go. I wake up to a little bit of drool on my pillow, feel like it's gonna be a bad day. Yeah, I'm tired of shit, and the coffee ain't hit yet, damn, ain't that great.